Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. I hope everyone's staying out of the rain today, and the weather's going to be nasty this week, but act accordingly. Hey, I got to listen, the NFL playoffs this weekend was unbelievable. I tell you what, highlighted by the last game of the weekend. We're down to 4 teams, and the Bills and Chiefs were the last game to decide what that was. And there you go. That's the game-winning touchdown by Isaiah Pacheco. But my goodness, how good is Pat Mahomes? That's the last drive right there when Josh Allen was trying to get the ball downfield, set them up for a field goal that would have tied the game. It was only a 44-yard shot, but that weather, obviously we know in Buffalo, is swirling, and the ball just kind of sailed right on Tyler Bass, the kicker. But what a fantastic game. 2 years after one of the greatest games, if not the greatest game I've ever seen, when the Chiefs also won that one 42-36. This game was lost by that field goal right there, 27-24, and that man, Pat Mahomes, I cannot say enough unbelievably great things about him. He is, even after a little bit of a down year for his standards, this guy has 7 years in the NFL, and all 7 years he has had made it at least to the AFC Championship game. That, my friends, is remarkable. So congratulations to the Chiefs. They're going to have to go and play another tough game on the road. That's the first road win that Pat Mahomes has ever had in the playoffs. That's kind of remarkable. And they got it in a tough environment in Buffalo, a team that had been rolling, a team that had been 500 midway through the season, and then they went on a big roll to get that number 2 seed. So they are out, and obviously Baltimore Ravens are going to be the team that Kansas City's got to travel to next. That defense was suffocating, and this was a good game. This was 10-10 at halftime. It was a well-fought game. I got to give credit to that Houston Texans team and DeMeco Ryans head coach, because this was to me, the biggest surprise team in the NFL. Most people had them winning around 4 games. They finished 10-7. And I got to tell you, the rookie quarterback played amazing. But that guy right there, I mean C.J. Stroud on that end, but that guy right there, Lamar Jackson, who will be the MVP of the NFL, he played spectacularly as he always does. They won this game going away 34-10. A little deceiving on the score margin, but it was still a great performance. The Baltimore Ravens are arguably the hottest team in the NFL. They are playing great football. The Chiefs will have their hands full again for the second straight week. They'll be a 3-point underdog going on the road. So we'll see if they can pull this one out. Mahomes has to be mentioned as one of the greatest of all time. And going forward here, the Ravens, that's going to be the AFC, but how about the NFC? The 49ers, the other number 1 seed, along with the Ravens. There's your man Brock Purdy. Only in his second year, the guy, all he does is win, win, win. And he leads a great squad. Even when Deebo Samuel went down with an injury, they came back with that man, Billy McCaffrey, 2 touchdowns. He knows how to pick up the slack. That's what they haven't had in the past when a star has gone down. Now this team is so well balanced with McCaffrey and Kittle and Ayuk, of course. They've got a lot of weapons. And, of course, Deebo Samuel, he's got a bad shoulder. He went down early in the game. We'll see. But that was a thriller game, by the way, 24-21, a game that most people thought that the Niners might run away with at home, but the Packers led for a good part of the game, and I got to give them credit because that's a team that probably should not have made the playoffs. If the Saints hadn't blown a 17-0 lead in fourth quarter in September, the Saints would have been in the playoffs and not the Packers, but that didn't happen. So that team got hot at the end of the season as well. And another team that got hot at the end of the season and also took the Saints out of the playoffs was the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Packers and Bucks, who most people thought shouldn't have been in it, got to the second round. And they won their wild card games, got to the division game. And here you go. I got to say this, man. This team right here, Jahmyr Gibbs, and that team, the passing, Josh Reynolds right there, they have an attack. And that might be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, by the way, he's a great player too. Those two guys caught touchdown passes, Reynolds and St. Brown. But this team is looking great. But they have to go at San Francisco. But who knows, man? The Packers proved they could almost win in that ballpark over there, in that stadium in San Francisco. And who knows? The Lions are playing great football. This is only their first and second playoff wins in 30 years. But now they're going to have to go away from home. It's a great story. You know, former Saints assistant coach Dan Campbell, is doing a great job there. You know, Goff is looking good at quarterback, and they've got a lot of weapons, so that's going to be fun to watch. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have his hands full with that great defense in San Francisco. Speaking of football and the Saints not making the playoffs, well, their offseason's coming up here. We've got our man coming out from the back, Logan Graffia. We're going to talk all about the Saints and other stuff as well, but maybe some moves that they might need to make in the offseason with the, obviously, free agency coming up, the draft after that. They got the Combine right here and the Senior Bowl, so there's going to be a lot of analysis and evaluation going on right there. But also last night, how about this, the NBA games last night, off the hook. It's rare when a 62-point game doesn't get you the most points a night. That's because this guy, Joel Embiid, had 70 points and 18 rebounds. My goodness, this guy was the MVP last year, and he's looking like it again. He wanted to go off against the rookie. There you go, Wemby, playing for the San Antonio Spurs, and they were making some jokes before the game about how they were going to crush Embiid. All joking, of course. Coach Pop is not that dumb to make that kind of bulletin board material, but I'm going to tell you what, Embiid listened and he got down to business. The guy can play, and he got that one, and they got a big win as well. But on the other end, how about what happened? If you're in competition with a guy named Michael Jordan, or not in a conversation, I should say, you're the only two players that have done something. You're doing something right. 1990, Jordan got 69 points, 18 rebounds, and 6 assists. Those are the only two players in NBA history that have had at least 65, 15, and 5 assists. That's good company to be in. And some more good company is what we didn't mention. Who got the 62? It was Karl Anthony Towns last night. So there's only been 4 times in the same night that two players have gotten 60-plus points. And I remember one well, 1978. I was a youngster following the NBA closely. David Thompson and George Gervin. David Thompson scored 70-something points. This was the last game of the season. They were trying to get the scoring title. Who was going to get it? Gervin played that night. He goes, how much do I need? I need 63. He almost had that at halftime. That's how good those two guys were. But that's it. Those other two, I wasn't born yet. But Will Chamberlain, if there's going to be a superlative stat, he's usually on it. And Jerry West and Elgin Baylor were his teammates on those 2 times in 61 and 62, well before Scottie A's birth. But that's the line. Look at this line that Towns had. The former Kentucky Wildcat star, 62 points, 8 rebounds, but the 10 assists is what I'm talking about. I mean, 10 three-pointers is what I'm talking about. 10 three-pointers made, and he made 10 out of 15, so he had 67%. The guy can shoot, as you can see there. He was in the NBA three-point shooting contest as a 7-footer. That's never happened before, and that shows you last night exactly what he can do. They're dangerous, but they did blow an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter to lose to the Charlotte Hornets. Hey, speaking of basketball, the Pels, well, they're moving up slowly, man. They're playing some good basketball. This was not one of those games. The Suns beat them handily the other night. I mean, they just played great basketball in that game, but the Pels are still 25 and 18 right now. They're tied with those same Suns. You know, that guy right there, Devin Booker, had 52 points in that game. But the Pelicans, if you look at them as a whole, they were kind of 500, dangling around 9-9 in that region. So they really picked it up. They're 16-9 since that point, and they are tied for 5th and moving up in the standings. They were out of the playoff picture for a second, and then they got to 10 to 8 and 7. They were 6, and now they're 5. So hopefully they can continue this trend and keep moving up in the playoffs. And they also top the Southwest Division, if you care about that kind of stuff, and that's the division thing. My day, we used to always talk about divisions. Now it's just the West or the East. But the fact is they do lead their own division that has San Antonio, Dallas, and of course Houston. So moving forward, how about this in basketball? Tulane Green Wave, give them some credit. My man Ron Hunter's got him going. That guy there for Memphis is one of the best players in the country, David Jones. But I'm going to tell you this, Tulane for the third consecutive year beat the Memphis Tigers, the 10th ranked team. There's Kevin Cross who had 21. But guess who was the high scorer in this game? Our man, Sion James, who's come on this show twice, had 22 points. And look at him going high over the big man. Sion James is a point guard, and he's doing that over an All-American type center. I love Sion, great guy, and I love this team. They are now 3-3 in the conference. That was a big win. They had a heartbreaker last week, a 1-point loss in a game that they kind of got screwed by the refs in that one with a foul called on a three-pointer that was very iffy against University of Texas San Antonio. I mean, I can't remember the team, but that's what it was the week before. FAU, Florida Atlantic. That's right, the team that went to the Final Four the year before. So they should be 4-2. But the fact is, Ron Hunter's got them playing great basketball. They had a tough, schedule going into the conference, so that should help them the rest of the way. And also LSU Tigers last week. Well, that's A&M, but the game before, they played Ole Miss, who's ranked 22nd in the country, and they were 15-1. And I'm going to tell you, that guy right there, Jordan Wright, went off for 27 points in that game, and they beat the Rebels. And then they came back Saturday at a game I went to up there at the PMAC, Maravich Assembly Center, and they led most of the way. They felt like they had some control. Then the second half, it got very close. And then, in the game that they didn't execute down at the end, there's Jalen Cook, the transfer from Tulane, who came back to LSU after being there before he's at Tulane. And they missed a couple big shots. Both those guys in that picture, Wright and Cook, missed some big ones at the end of the game that could have won it or at least tied it. And they ended up losing by 4 after the team hit some free throws. But after the game, I got to give relatively new head coach Matt McMahon some credit. He came out to dinner. You see the guy on the right, John Brady, the former LSU coach. There's Mike Giorlando, the former Loyola coach. And, of course, in the middle is one of the guys that's been around LSU basketball for 50-plus years. He has been there since the beginning of Dale Brown. That's Jim Moore. He is a legend. But Matt McMahon, we talked a lot of basketball that night. I feel very strongly they're still 4-2 in the SEC, or 3-2 in the SEC, I should say. That gave them a chance to go 4-1. That was a heartbreaker. But they go to Georgia this week, so hopefully they'll turn that back around. Hey, as far as today's show, remember last week I told you we were going to have two of Tulane's 5-star guys. They've never had a 5-star football recruit ever. We were going to have Ty Thompson, the quarterback from Oregon, and Mario Washington, who was the wide receiver who I did games with when I did USC games last year. But the coach said, hey, listen, they just got to campus. Let's get them a couple weeks to get acclimated, which I totally understand. So we're going to have them on in a couple weeks. And we're definitely going to have them on right after like February 7th-ish, okay? So look forward to that. That's going to be fun. Unfortunately, the guest that we had replaced them with, Alex Bauman, well, he had to be rushed to the hospital. You might remember Bauman right there, the tight end. He's still with the Wave. He arguably made the biggest play in Tulane football history. And if anybody wants to argue this with me, I'll go toe-to-toe with you, because this play right here that beat USC in the Cotton Bowl last year, in a play that they had to review because they said it was incomplete. They realized he did not drop it. He caught it. Well, Alex Bauman, that play got them, I'm going to go ahead and say hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands in donations for the NIL program. I promise you, that was probably the biggest play in their history, and they went 12-2 that season, and that was a thrilling game. They came back from 16 down, or they outscored them 16-0, I should say, to win that game 46-45. He had to be rushed to the hospital. I don't think it's serious, but hopefully it's going to be fine. So we're going to have longer segments with the guys we have, and one of those guys is Mark Booras, and I can't wait to meet him. He's going to be coming on here. He's taking Tulane to the NCAA tournament 6 different times. 6 of the last 7 years, I believe, he's gone there. And more importantly, he's recovered from a heart transplant. And I've been around organ donation awareness people for 30 years, people that have been in the forefront of moving that up, and I've never had one on my show, so I'm very, very fortunate today. So we're going to talk to Mark a little longer about what's going on with Tulane tennis. I look forward to that because they are one of these teams that's been on a roll. Remember, during Katrina, they were out for 4 full years. And then he took over 2 years before they came back and resurrected the program, and has done great things over the last decade and a half. So I can't wait to have him on the show. But Also, next week, we're going to continue some tennis because Welsh Hotard, who was on about a year and a half ago when he transferred from Oklahoma to LSU, he is now LSU's #1 player. He's going to come on next week, and we're going to talk about the LSU program, too. So we talk all sports here. I mean, you know, we talk about the big ones, but I like to get little dips and dabs of all the sports, and I'm looking forward to that as well. And so I'm having him on, and also next week, John Brady, who you saw in that picture, is going to come on with another coach, and we're also going to have a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer that wrote a book about Dale Brown, a recent one about the whole court name change. So it's going to be fun. So here, I got some bad news, though, right here, besides the Bauman having to go to the hospital, but this is even worse to some people. People in Georgia, in Athens, Uga 10 has passed away, and I lived in Atlanta for 20 years, and they love their English Bulldogs. Trust me on this. Those dogs are sacred to those Georgia Bulldog fans. They love them. He passed away this week, and he is affectionately known as Q because he loves his barbecue, and they got some good barbecue in Georgia. I can attest to that. So rest in peace, Uga. We got a great show for you, people. I cannot wait. Coming up next on Primetime Sports.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I told you Alex Bauman couldn't make it. I made a mistake. He wasn't rushed to the hospital. He had to go to the doctor, and it was an important appointment. So we're going to get him back soon, but he made arguably the greatest play in Tulane history. I will stand by that because the NIL dollars started flying up, and that team went 12-2 and beat the Heisman Trophy winner that year, Caleb Williams, and one of the greatest wins I've ever seen. I'll never forget that moment when they were down 15, and I told the guy sitting next to me, happened to be Dickie Brennan, and I said, I think we got a chance. He goes, well, it's going to be tough, isn't it? Yes, but they did it, and they won that game. But moving forward, I haven't had a lot of tennis on this show. You know, I always talk about tennis when all the big tournaments are coming up. And by the way, the last American in the men's side finally lost last night. Fritz lost to the great Joker. Novak Djokovic is moving into the semifinals. But, you know, we always talk about the tennis and the Wimbledon and all the big tournaments and how they're doing. But the only college tennis player I've ever had was Welsh Hotard, who, by the way, we had him on about a year and a half ago when he transferred from Oklahoma. The New Orleans native decided to come home and go to LSU. And we had a great conversation. Now he's been there a year and a half, and we wanted to catch up with him. So he's going to come next week. But you know what? I'm going to stay on this tennis team. Before that, this show right here, we have Tulane's coach who happened to be at LSU for 10 years back in the late 90s, early 2000s before coming to Tulane. He's been at Tulane since, I believe, 2007. He took over a program that had been flushed away after Katrina, no pun intended there, but they were out for 4 years. So he was here for 2 years before starting this program. They went to 6 NCAA tournaments in the last 7 years. I'm pretty sure about that, including last season. And here he is. His name's Mark Booras, and he had a heart transplant back. I mentioned that back in late May, and here he is, fully recovered. And so glad to have you on the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
It's good to see you, man.
It's an honor to be here. You do great work, and everybody talks about your show, and we love it. So.
You serious?
Yeah.
That's the first I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
All right.
Talking about that football game, I was there at that game. I was in tears in the stands, crying like we were coming back.
Isn't that
so
amazing?
Exciting, and we had a great seat right there towards the end zone, and so I saw the final play when he made that catch. Amazing.
You know, I'm on the road every weekend with our crew, and we're from all over the country, and they know I love LSU and Tulane passionately, and UNO for basketball. I root for our local teams, always have, even when I lived away for 30 years. But even people had no stake in this game, no dog in the fight, said that's one of the greatest games they've ever seen. So I can't imagine being there and sitting there as a guy rooting for Tulane. And tell me real quick what that's like for you, not your sport even, but you love the Green Wave and love what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about development here, right? And programs coming, out of nothing, right? And you see what the coaches have done there and what Willie did for us for how many years and how he brought the program from there to a really pretty great, and wonderful guy. I love football, and I'd never really traveled. I had actually never traveled to a Tulane away game, but then this one came up, and I said, I got to go to it. This is fantastic, and I was free from recruiting, so I jump in there and just going crazy in the stands. I mean, it was packed in there, and I mean, it was the buzz with the Tulane, alum and everybody that was there was amazing. And I mean, it was like a home game almost, right? And but watching this happen before our eyes going, hey, this can happen. And I was sitting with a couple other coaches, and I was like, hey, I think we got a chance here. I think we did. They're like, we don't know. And I'm getting text messages from my friends out in California. Hey, what's going on? I said, just wait. And
I mean, listen, I can't imagine because, listen, I was a kid at Tulane Stadium when they packed 84,000 into an 80,000 seat stadium when they beat LSU 14-0. Now, I was more of a Tulane fan then. I was on my brother's shoulders after the game, and then I was on the road last year, or the year before last, the 2022 season, doing a championship game. I think it was the Mountain West up in Boise, when Tulane had the same kind of experience. Obviously different than beating LSU, but they won something where everybody was on the field. And that, to me, had to be incredible. That was, obviously the American Athletic Conference championship game where they beat UCF, revenge loss, and they're one of their 2 losses that year. But then they came back and didn't top that. And that's the thing. How do you top the thing that they had on the field in New Orleans at Ullman, and they did it? And when I see the people celebrating after the game, it's like the Super Bowl. And they finished 9th in the country.
And that's, I started the answer with the idea of developing a program, right? And the thing was, we watched this program go from where it was to the upper echelon of college sports, right? And I mean, to see that and to know that there's a possibility and a hope for things like that to happen, right? The small guy can go and do something great, and that's what we preach in our sport and our specifically with men's tennis, but a lot of things we're doing at Tulane is like, hey, you can be a winner, right? You can go and do this.
Well, we got to raise up the socks real quick. We got green socks, and not maybe Tulane green, but they're green. It looks like those are St. Patty's Day socks. I like them. So you're representing, and you did pretty much the same thing. You took a team that was basically from scratch, and you came in and talk about the process, because you came from LSU. We'll get in that in a second. And you were an assistant coach there. And then you got to Tulane, but you weren't going to start for 2 years. Now, when you took the job, am I correct in saying it was
1 year, actually. It
was 1 year. Okay, so you took it in 2007, and so the 2007-8 season you're out, and you started 2008-9.
Right.
Okay, so give me that whole process and how that worked.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because at LSU, I had started the last couple of years. I started interviewing for head jobs and had some really great programs that I was going and kind of like finished in the finalists as whatever. Didn't get some jobs, and so everybody was saying, "Hey, you're gonna be this next Power 5 coach," and right? And I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." And
you paid your dues.
Yeah, sure. And so I mean, it was I was thinking that was the track, and then I got a phone call from Rocky I got a letter actually in the mail from Rocky Andrew, who was the current former president of Lawn Tennis Club, New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club, and a great friend of Rick Dixon, tennis partner of his, and he was actually one of our umpires at the LSU matches. And so Rocky writes a nice letter and says, "Hey, Mark, we're thinking about starting this program over again. Would you be interested in coaching it?" And I was like, "There's no program. What are you talking about?
What program are we talking about?"
But the thing is that Tulane, we saw Tulane go from a very okay program to a top 15 program, and beating LSU in the regionals that last year before Katrina, or 2 years before Katrina. So we saw them come from this level.
So you were there at LSU when they beat you?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you saw what could be.
Yeah, and so as I started to think about it, I looked and said, "Wow, what a great opportunity! To do something that's never been done before in college tennis, at least, right? You take a top 25 program, cancel for 4 years, and then you go, try to bring them back into the top 25.
Sure.
And I thought, nobody's ever done this. I like to think about being a pioneer in different ways, and I said, let's go do something special. Let's go do something that nobody's ever done. So I said, yeah, I'd love to, and started that process. And so I got the job, and Rick Dixon, unbelievable job of just getting everything back on their feet, right? Losing 8 programs, losing everything to Katrina, and then reinstating and getting us to a place of prominence.
That's interesting. That's around when I met Rick, because I was a sports agent for a decade, and I left TV, went to that, and one of the players that was an unsung guy nationally, but great at Tulane, David Gomez. I did basketball, and I had this big-time player from Wisconsin, but they ended up playing this postseason tournament together, and he ended up being a client of mine. But Rick came up to Atlanta, and I met him. We talked for a long time, and that he kind of helped work that deal up. But point being is, I loved what he had done for Tulane, and obviously, Troy took that to another level, right? And they got prominence. But I want to know, with that year, you're talking about they convinced you to come, but how did you convince players to come?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about it, guys, and I know the first year you took some licks, right?
Oh, yeah.
You won 3 matches, though, and I'm trying to figure out how you do that with guys that, were thinking, why would I go here?
Right.
I mean, they have no history in the last 4 years.
Yeah, great question. So that first year was tough. We were 3-16, I think. And,
right.
Whenever I talk about Tulane tennis, I always talk about that first team, for those guys taking the step and taking the chance on us, right? Those guys making the investment to come here and try to do something really, really different, right?
What's
and
your
they
pitch?
could have gone to.
Is that the pitch?
Well, yeah. So part of the pitch was, hey, you can go and do something that's never been done before, right? You can go be part of that team that right now they're going to be, whatever, but in 4 years, where are you guys going to be? You can see, hey, I was the one that came back, took the chance, and I got that program back into the top 50, top 40, top 25. And it was because of your efforts, and you're the ones that built this program from scratch, right? And so that was one of the pitches. But the other thing was, Tulane Academics is just well known, and it's a huge attraction for a lot of tennis players. So I knew that academically we were going to get enough looks from good tennis players, and then the city itself, socially, there's so much culture here, right? There's not a whole lot of colleges in America that have what I always call the 1-2-3 punch, and that is number 1, academics, number 2, athletic opportunity, number 3, culture and social thing. So that was my basic recruiting. It's still my recruiting pitch to this day is the 1-2-3 punch. And so the kids that I was getting that first year, we did have a full allotment of scholarships. Rick was great. He said you can do what you want with them, but I wanted to build the program slowly and try to get a great foundation instead of just going and spending all 4 scholarships, get guys that might not graduate. Then in 4 years I got to go recruit all these guys again.
Right. You built
so I used 1.5 scholarships the first year, and so I had 2 players on scholarship and 7 walk-ons. So
you saved them.
Yeah, so I saved them each year, and the next year I used 1.5 or 2, and the next year I used maybe 1 or something like that.
So people that don't know what that means is that like baseball, you can split the scholarship up and you make it a half,
right?
And then that way you can build your team almost like a fantasy team with the amount of money you have, right?
Right.
And that's what tennis is like as well.
Yeah.
So now I'm assuming you're using all 9 or what?
Well, no. So we only have 4.5.
Oh,
like
4.5.
NCAA standard, NCAA limit for all of men's tennis is 4.5.
Okay.
So I had 4.5 scholarships for its starting 6 players.
Oh,
basically.
I see.
So I used those scholarships over 4 years and tried to have it where I had like an actual every year I had scholarships available.
I got you.
And Rick was on board with that. He liked the idea of building the foundation. And the big thing was getting kids that were academically going to be really solid and had good character and were just really good athletes and were going to work. Because what I like to do as a coach is I like to develop players. And so I always say, if you get a guy with the right kind of attitude and the right kind of ability, I can develop him. And so that was part of the pitch.
Okay, you're 52. Hope you don't mind me saying that on air. But you've spent more than half your life now in Louisiana.
Yeah.
You're from Chicago.
Yeah.
You played tennis at West Virginia, top 20 player, correct, in the country. Yeah. And you played pros. And then you went into coaching, but you came down to Baton Rouge, which I have to think is like space compared to the places you've been, right? And now New Orleans. So you've been here for almost 27 years.
Yeah, 26.
Half your life, right?
Yeah.
So tell me what that's been like for you, and obviously now you're married and you have a child with your family, but tell me what that's been like for you.
Yeah, the biggest thing is my language has changed.
For sure.
I make groceries and go visit Mom and them. and
Mom and them. Yeah, you're right.
So, the thing about Louisiana in general, the culture down here is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's Baton Rouge or New Orleans, 2 different places, right, and 2 different settings, but the people down here have been amazing. And everybody always asks, what's New Orleans like? And I say, you don't understand until you come down here. And they say, oh, is it Bourbon Street? I said, that's like 1% of New Orleans. And I said,
it really is.
It's a pretty much a family atmosphere.
It's like 1%. I grew up here, left for 30 years, and it's something about the city. It brings you back. And I always knew eventually I'd come back. I didn't know when, and finally I was in several cities, but mostly in Atlanta, and I finally was like, I got to get out of here for sure. So I came back. But I'm going to say one thing about your experience, because you're coming from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you grow up with Bulls, Bears. Well, 96, 97, 98, I was able to produce Craig Sager at every Bulls playoff game.
Oh, wow.
That second three-peat. So I grew to love your city. Yeah. And we just we'd stay at the Four Seasons on Michigan Ave and just not even check out because we go on the road with them and then we come back and just stay there. It's like a two-month hotel. Yeah. So coming down here, let's just talk about New Orleans more than Baton Rouge.
Sure.
Because this city, as much as I love Baton Rouge, is totally different. They might as well be in 2 states across the country.
Right.
And what's that experience coming from a Baton Rouge to New Orleans been like?
Yeah, people always ask that question too, like how is it differ in recruiting? How is it different in these things?
Yeah.
I say there's kids that want that experience.
Right.
There's kids that want this experience.
That's
right.
a great answer.
And
answer.
It's 2 totally different experiences, but you're still going to get great tennis at both places. You're going to get good education at both places, right? And so I think for us, I had never been to New Orleans. At one time, I came to New Orleans with my mom when I was in Baton Rouge, and she came to visit.
Not quite going to New Orleans that way.
Yeah.
But no, you get to see stuff.
And I was like, okay, well, what is this like? And I was like, oh wow. And we went to, of course, Bourbon Street and the French Quarter, and that was the only thing we did. And then when I got down here for the job, I was really amazed because Rick Dixon plugged me in at the club with all these different tennis players and all these different families that immediately embraced us and took us under their wing and showed us, hey, this is what the New Orleans community is like. And on top of that, here's what the New Orleans tennis community is like. And there was such a huge tennis community that made my job even easier almost because of the support that was everywhere. We had guys reaching out from everywhere trying to help us in every way. So I immediately learned about the New Orleans community. At my first time at the Walmart, I learned about New Orleans people because I was standing there. So I get here, listen to this. So I get here, I move in to my house in February when the Saints are playing the Super Bowl in the next weekend, okay? Or so like 2 weeks, no, they were in the playoffs.
The NFC Championship.
The NFC Championship game, right?
Yeah, they had the Eagles here for the division championship.
Chicago, wait.
And they went to Chicago.
Yeah, okay. So I moved in right before that game, okay? And so I'm walking down the street and everybody's got Saints gear and everybody's like, who dat? I'm like, what is going on?
Big.
Yeah, and so I didn't even watch the Saints really when I was in Baton Rouge, right? Because we had LSU football, right? So, and they were winning national titles. So it was like, that was the exciting thing for us. And so I get down here and it's just everything's, who dat. My neighbors are all who dat. And I'm standing in line at the Walmart.
The one on Chapatulas?
Yeah, on Chapatulas.
They kind of knew then, huh?
Yeah, and so I'm standing there and I'm just looking straight ahead, got my groceries there, and guy says, "Man, you saw that game last night?" And and I was like, and I just kind of stand here and I'm looking around, there's nobody around me, and he goes, "Man, how about did this running?" And I was like, I was like, "Are you talking to me?" And he goes, "Yeah, did you see that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I saw the game. It was
That's
great."
how we do, baby.
So all of a sudden, I'm talking to some guy in line at the grocery who I've never seen before.
Right.
Doesn't know me from Adam, and he just wants to talk
That's
about.
how it is in New Orleans.
And that was my introduction in New Orleans. So you said, what's it like going from Baton Rouge to New Orleans?
That's a great way to say it.
This is my first week.
Because moving away, you realize not everybody wants to talk to you on the street.
Oh yeah.
No, I lived in New York for a bit, and they're like, "You talking to me?
Yeah.
Get the hell out of my face!" And they used another word instead of hell. And I'm like, okay, you're not so friendly.
Yeah.
But down here, we love everybody, especially when we're doing something fun and good.
Mm-hmm.
We want everybody to know about it. Let's get in it, just like the Saints win it.
And then the week after that, so that was all like the playoffs and the Super Bowl, And then I didn't even know this, but I lived on a parade route. So, and Mardi Gras was
Mardi Gras.
like 2 weeks later or something. And so we're like, what is all these people, everywhere is for 10 days worth.
That's great. You're right. That is great because it's obviously late January when we lost to the Bears and that freezing cold up there, and then we come back and it's Mardi Gras. That's the thing. There's always something to do here.
Yeah.
And when Mardi Gras is over, you got festival weeks. Every weekend there's a festival, of course, capped off by Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
So that's the experience I want before we get into tennis more. What's that been like for y'all, knowing that, hey, there's always something to do?
That's what, I mean, my wife and I love the city because of all the different options, right? And we tell this to recruits all the time. They're like, hey, what's it like? And they just think it's one thing or the other thing. I said, no, you don't understand. It's like, like you said, coming from Chicago, there's so many different things to do.
Sure.
And so much cultural, so much ethnical stuff, all these different things that are great.
But your wife and child, is it Georgiana?
Georgiana, yeah. Uh-huh.
Georgiana,
yeah. Named after my mom. Look at a sweet little girl.
There's your Scott Van Pelt look. All right.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
What was I saying?
No, you're talking about all the things to do here.
Oh yeah. So sorry. So we're talking about the cultural things, and so coming from Chicago, I'm used to kind of having things at my fingertips.
Sure.
I can do everything here as well.
Yeah.
We've got the food, we've got the Broadway shows, we've got the operas, we've got all these different things. You can go and do so many different things socially, and then on top of that, I got some pamphlet about all the different fests during the year, 200 or something crazy during the year. And I'm
Po' Boy Fest.
Yeah. Always
Fried
something.
Chicken Fest.
Yeah. So, it's so fun to get out and do things, and not to my wife and I would not classify us as partiers. We don't go to bars. We don't do that.
No.
But we have a lot of fun here,
right?
Because we do all this.
You don't need to do that.
Yeah, and that's what that was. One of the challenges with recruiting, because a lot of parents are like, hey, we heard about New Orleans and saw the video Girls Gone Wild or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that's not New Orleans.
That's a part. That's really not the part that New Orleanians.
Right.
I went to Bourbon Street twice my first 20 years of life.
Right.
And then
So I just really try to push this side of we're family people. We've been here 15 years and have no desire to leave. We love it.
Right.
Because everything that it offers. So it really, we embraced the culture while it also kind of embraced us and brought us in. And so everybody was so welcoming. It was like it was so easy for us.
Real quick, you've coached a lot of great players. I want to get in this team first, but you had several great ones at LSU. When I was at LSU, there was no Americans. In fact, the guy I played against a little bit in high school, Brett Schwartz, was the only American on the team.
Great guy, takes me fishing every month.
Yeah. That's been years since I've even seen it.
Yeah.
But my point is, he was the best player in the state coming out, and then he was sixth on that team at best.
Right.
But that's what tennis in college is like. You have a lot of foreigners. Obviously, it's a worldwide sport, and I know LSU was like that, and I'm imagining they're still like that, although they do have Welsh Otard from New Orleans, the #1. But you guys are half and half. And is that not normal? There you go. Alex is one of your starters.
Yeah. So I think the way we look at it is tennis itself is like a top 3 sport in every other country in the world.
Sure is.
Right. So that's
Rugby,
why
tennis, and
soccer.
Right.
Yeah. And so you have all the best athletes playing those 3 sports, whereas you come to America and the top 3 sports are something else.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that there's not good tennis players. It just means there's a more depth in different countries.
Right.
So we love to have a mix, and I love to have this idea of having culture on the team so the guys can get a good experience, right? And my college team, we had a mix of players, Americans and internationals. And it was good for me because it got me out of my kind of my mentality of SUVs and Walmarts are the only way to go, right? Even though that's,
I've been to Morgantown many times. I get you.
Right. So, I think that cultural perspective is huge for development for our guys because it makes them see outside of maybe where they came from and say, hey, how can I grow in a different way? And then you learn how to work together with these guys, and all of a sudden you have a different kind of cohesion and a totally different team atmosphere.
You got guys. I looked at that list there. 6 guys international, 6 from America, but you're not just international. You got Australia. You got Cairo, Egypt. Obviously, England and I guess Switzerland or maybe that area.
Yeah.
But they're all over. How do you recruit guys from Egypt?
Yeah, well, the internet's a great thing nowadays because all the results are online. So you can kind of get a general base of their success or their level watching some of the tournament results online. And then once you kind of get these ideas of these guys, you start reaching out to them on the different platforms with social media things, or if you have emails or whatnot. And then you start making the trips to go watch them play someplace, or do the home visits and things like that. So we have a little easier time now in the last 15 years of recruiting to see the internationals and see more of their results and get a better idea of them ahead of time, right? So we have access to way more people than we did back in the Stone Ages when I was playing.
Well, you've been very consistent your last decade here, and I'm going to say this. I'm not saying you weren't before, but I'm just looking back. I was thinking late last night going through all the seasons and then digging into each season to see maybe where things got better. But I know you finished. I think you finished the highest you've ever finished last year. You were 23rd in the country, and I know you've been higher at times. But my point is this. But you've always consistently been around in the 20s, 30s. Maybe some 40s, and that just shows me a program that has made it. You're always there, and this isn't like going to, Stanford or maybe a state school like LSU where they can get maybe different kind of players and guys that are great. You've done it here at Tulane, and that just shows you. You talk about Willie Fritz building his program. You did the same thing right here from scratch.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's humbling to hear, and it's an honor for you to hear you say that. But you got to give all the credit to these guys. These guys came in knowing what they were getting into, right? And so you don't get to that level without the time of work, right? And so these guys are making the investment. You heard me say this before. I sound like a broken rhetoric, but that's what they're doing. They're making the investment. They're working so hard because they want to do something special. They want to make Tulane something special. And it's without these guys, we'd be nowhere, right? So we've been able to recruit some guys that really really invest so well and want so much for Tulane University.
I'd say I can see why they want to play for you. It's easy to see after spending 20 minutes sitting here. I got to tell you, obviously you had a big thing happen last season. And I don't know, you're obviously a super healthy guy. You're in shape. And you're the first, I mentioned this in my open, you're the first guest I've ever had, I believe, to ever have a heart transplant. I know it's not common, but talk about how this happened, how you realized that, hey, I might be in trouble, and then talk about how you got on the list, the emergency list, and now 7 months later, you look like you're good as new.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a miracle right here.
Right.
The doctors are saying it too. You know, like the fact that how this stuff put together. You know, there is a God, right? And He's looking over us because I shouldn't be here right now, basically. So I give you the real Cliff Notes version of it.
Yeah.
About a year and a half ago, I started not being able to breathe when I was walking, and had this thing called desaturation, which is there's no oxygen going to your blood, to your lungs.
Right.
And so you can't breathe, and then tachycardia, where your heart rate goes way up. So it started about a year and a half ago. My cardiologist was a former Tulane tennis player, Mark Bernstein, best guy ever. I'm playing tennis with him at the club, and he's watching me, and I can't breathe. And he goes, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I can't breathe." And he looks at my watch, and the heart rate, it's 180.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm playing tennis. Like I used to do this, you play tennis for hours, and it's 120, 130. And he goes, "Mark, I'm 65 years old, and my heart rate's 100, and I'm doing all the running today." And I said,
Right.
"I know."
Oh my
and he goes,
gosh.
"You got to come into the office." So I come into the office, and we do a bunch of tests. We do a billion things. He's trying the different meds. Basically, he treats me for about 6 or 7 months, maybe. The total thing was like 8 months, but basically I started taking medicine for about 4 months and trying to treat these things, but we couldn't figure out what was going on. And so he said, "This is really odd. None of these medicines are working." And I kept getting worse. It was the problem. So it wasn't like I was just staying the same. I kept getting worse every month or every week. And he was, unbelievable doctor texting me like, "Mark, how is the medicine working?" And you ever had a doctor call and text you? No, right?
No. Well, I have one, yeah. But it's rare.
I mean,
it's rare.
And so, like, you talk about like how all this stuff worked together, having someone like Mark in my life to be able to do that for me and look over me. And so he's like making adjustments every other day. And finally, we after months of treating me, he brings me in and says, "We got to do an MRI." So they put me under the machine, get the MRI results back. He's completely shocked. He says, and I'm at USF getting ready to play.
Very good program.
Yes, very good program.
Very good.
And so
South Florida, not San Francisco.
It's like an hour before the match or 45 minutes before the match. Usually don't have my phone on me, but I'm on the road. Like, hey, maybe something's going wrong, right? So, I look at the phone and it says Mark Bernstein. I'm like, oh no, this is bad. Right? He's calling me. So he goes, "Hey, Mark, I got your results from your MRI," and he goes, "It's not really good. It's because it's awful." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know how to treat you anymore." And there's another electrophysiologist there, cardiologist working. He says, "We don't know how to treat you. We don't know what you have, and we need to send you to Cleveland. We want you to go to Cleveland Clinic. They're the best in the world, and try to get diagnosed because we don't know what's going on anymore." And so that next week, basically, I remember being at USF hearing this on the phone, and I started crying, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm getting ready to go out for a match. I had no idea what he goes. I said, "I mean, how bad is it? Am I going to die?" And he's like, "Mark, I don't know."
It's your heart.
Yeah, and he goes, "It's really bad." And I was like, okay. So anyway, I jump on a plane, and I go up to Cleveland with the doctor they set me up with, Andrew Higgins, and get up there. And I think, so this is me, like total meathead, macho, whatever, athlete. And I go up there with all my gear because we're going to the conference tournament the next weekend.
You think you're going next, right.
Right. So
I get that completely.
So they said, "Come on up here for a couple days of testing. We'll see what we got, get you on some pills and get out of here." So I literally say, "I'm going to get on some pills and get out of here." And the first appointment with the doctor, he looks and says, "Okay, we're going to literally throw everything we have in the book at you, and we're going to see if we can get this going. But I want to let you know that you, at this point, without doing anything, you're a very good candidate for a heart transplant." And
that had to be shocking, right?
Like literally crickets. I'm saying, and I
to hit you that point, you knew how serious this was.
Yeah, and I said, "Doc, I'm 51 years old. I climbed a mountain last year. I play tennis all the time. I run. I do all these." I said, "What are you talking about?" Heart
transplant. That's got to be the craziest thing.
Right. And he goes, "Well, I just want you to know, I'm not saying you're gonna get one. I'm just saying, like, your heart is very sick, and we're gonna do everything we can to treat you and not do that." So I was like, "Look, I got a flight on Thursday to Orlando, and our team plays on Friday, and so I need to be out of here by then. So let's just." He goes,
"Just get this. Don't work that way. Right. You got to wait for somebody to die first, right?"
Exactly.
I mean, is that how it works?
And so he said, he's like, "Mark, I understand, and we'll do everything we can." And then by day 2, he just said, "Mark, you're not going
So
over.
you had to stay there in case
I had to
something
stay overnight.
happened.
Yeah. So I ended up with the testing. I ended up staying there, and then by day 2, they said, Mark, we can't let you go.
So is that how it works? You stay until you're on the emergency list. You stay.
Oh, well, so that stuff didn't happen for 8 weeks later.
Oh,
so
my
I got
gosh.
treated.
Oh, okay.
So the first day they put me in the hospital. Second day they said, we got to put you in the ICU. And they said, you're way worse than we thought. And so I get transferred to the ICU.
Oh, my gosh.
And then I was in the ICU for 8 weeks while they were trying all the different treatments for me. Still trying to just treat me with different medicines, everything that you've heard of, that usually works. And even stuff that is a little bit unique stuff, right? And they said, your heart's not even budging. And finally, at that point, at the 7-week mark, they said, we finished our last one and we can't do anything, and we're going to need to list you for a heart transplant. So then they listed me for a heart transplant. And from there, it was a waiting game, right, to when the heart would come, and which is a miracle in itself, because you have to have a perfect match, they call it, right? So the guy in general or girl has to be about your size, right, because it has to be the same size heart, and then it has to be blood
and
types,
you're tall,
and all these
so
different things. Yeah. So they were telling me, Mark, this could be a while, and I'm like, what do you mean a while? And he said, it could be months. We don't know. It could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months.
Some people wait years.
It could be years.
Yeah.
And he said, we've had people wait years for him. And I said, okay. So I'm sitting there in the ICU, got lines everywhere in my neck and everything. And 2 weeks later, we get a call and say, we have a perfect match for you.
Wow.
And I mean, just talk
You are
about,
a miracle.
Yeah. It was all flooding down, the tears, everything. I was like, this is unbelievable. And yeah.
The reason I brought this book out off the table was this guy's my sports idol, Pistol Pete Maravich. I mean, he was. If you're from Louisiana, I didn't see him in college when he was averaging 45 a game, so I was too young. But in the Jazz, for 5 years, 74 to 79, he led the league in scoring one of those years. He was just a great player, did everything pass. But I loved him. And he would have probably been alive if he had been lucky as you and got to know. He died on playing pickup when he was 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he never knew anything about his heart being defective. I mean, he was such a great human, a specimen. He was an athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, not like Michael Jordan type athlete, but he did some incredible things. And so he passed away, and I think about that when you said about your miracle story. A, playing tennis with a doctor. B, getting there and, getting the heart within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then now you look good as new.
And then the third part of the miracle. So by the way,
and you have a child
story,
right before that as well.
Yeah, 7 months old when I go in the hospital. Johnny Arthurs loves telling the story how he guarded Pistol Pete every year and kept him to his lowest number he'd ever.
100%.
Every time. And Johnny, tennis
Johnny
doubles
is one
partner
of my
of
favorite
mine.
dudes in the world. Went to my high school way before me, but he's a legend at Tulane and De La Salle, and I played hoops as well. So I love Johnny.
Johnny and Brooke are so fantastic.
Yeah.
Brooke, they were one of the couples that welcomed us in, and I played doubles with him all the time. He's so wonderful. So
well, we give gifts here, and I'm going to say this. I can't wait to root for Tulane tennis this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be fun, and you've been spectacular. But here,
thanks so much.
Speaking of Johnny, his teammate for 1 year was a guy named Al Andrews, who, by the way, led Tulane in scoring until Johnny Arthurs came. And Al scored 19 a game every year. Johnny comes in, averages 26 as I don't know if freshman could play back then, but his first year at Tulane. Yeah. So here, Al started this company, and may he rest in peace because he passed away, as you know, last summer.
Beautiful.
Task Performance, and that's kind of a Tulane little tent right there. That's the newest color.
Love
By the
it.
way, that's Heather Chambray.
Look at this. Fits perfect.
And then we got Mr. John Steakhouse. Now, as a heart transplant, I was a bit skeptical to give you this, but their meat is lean. They also have fish and other things. Yeah. So Desi Vega owns Mr. John Steakhouse along with my man Paul.
Wonderful.
So you got to ask for Archie. Archie.
Okay.
Rodenkirk is the man over there. But good luck to you the rest of your way.
Thanks so much.
Amazing story. I hope you're a lifelong Louisianian now because we love having you.
Yeah.
After 26 years, half your life you might as well be.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, and honored to be on your show, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Well, tell people, you have a big thing coming up, a big tournament, but tell people how they can support Tulane.
Oh yeah, so the next tournament will be the ITA kickoff weekend, and that's going to be at University of Arizona. There's actually going to be streaming, live streaming from the website at University of Arizona of the couple of the matches on Saturday and Sunday. And then we have about 8 home matches in a row from first weekend in February to second weekend in March. So we actually have, not including Mardi Gras weekend, tough to play then, but we have a ton of great home matches. We play 3 the SEC teams at home. We have Ole Miss, Mississippi State here, both top 25 programs. We have Auburn here, top 25
and you got
program.
LSU coming up
LSU,
on the 7th.
We're going to there, yeah. So that's a great
February
match to go
7th.
to up at LSU.
A lot of my friends in Baton Rouge watch the show, so they can come check
please come out to the match.
too.
Even if you're an LSU friend, come out to the match. We're promoting tennis. Danny Bryan there has done an unbelievable job as coach.
You coached him, right?
Yeah, he was. I recruited him, coached him.
I do my research, Coach.
Yeah.
You coached Danny Bryan, and he's now the head coach.
Yeah, Danny's such a great guy, and he's going to do an unbelievable job with the program. They're going to be fantastic in no time. Jeff Brown, give a shout out to Jeff Brown, guy who gave me my first shot, didn't know me from Adam, and literally said, sure, you can have the job. And then all of a sudden, here we are. So Jeff Brown, thanks for giving me a shot.
And his predecessor, I knew fairly well, Jerry.
Yeah, Simmons.
Simmons was something. That's a piece of work right there. Yeah. But Simmons was very successful now in Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Now, Mark doesn't know I'm doing this, but this surgery costs a lot, as you know, and I'm sure insurance paid, but I know they have a GoFundMe, and this is not him doing it, this is me. And I want to throw this out there because I don't know if that's updated on what they need. 200,000 is the goal. And these things cost a lot of money, and I know we all don't have enough to donate, but if you happen to, and you love this story, and you love helping people, this would be a great one to do it with. I'm telling you right now, if I had 100,000, it'd be going right there. I'm just going to say this. If you can help in any way, there's that GoFundMe information. I'm sure you can Google it up. But Mark, you might, I know he's surprised that I'm doing this, but you might know how to do this better than me. How would you do it?
Thanks for doing it. It's great. I mean, we've been so blessed by the amount of support we've had, whether it's a gift or whether it's calls and prayers and everything. So everybody that's been reaching out from around the world, it's ridiculous. Steve and Elizabeth Brinson and Sebastian Ray, one of my former players, put this GoFundMe together. And Eric Holden and Lisa Holden helped in some different ways with some fundraising things. The gifts flooding in. It's amazing. And it's, unfortunately, it's going to probably be necessary in the future, right? Yeah, once the insurance stops and going up for all the different stuff. But you click on the line.
Why the gifts are coming, because you're beloved. I can tell just your personality alone shows me that. But good luck and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right. I'm glad, Alex, I'm sorry you had to go to the doctor, but I'm kind of glad now because I got a lot more time to spend with him, and I appreciate you. That's Mark Booras. Go out and support the Tulane Green Wave next week. Like I said, Welsh Hotard. Tiger fans, you're going to be represented. He's coming on the show, as well as John Brady, another former LSU coach, and some other stuff going on as well. Hey, but coming up next, all the things you like. We're bringing our man out of the bullpen in the back. We do this once a quarter. Give Logan Graffia a little shot up here in the front. He handles a lot of things behind the scenes that help the show, along with the rest of the production crew. But he's coming on to talk. What's the Saints going to do in the offseason? What are they going to do? Are they going to pick up players? And what direction he thinks he's going to go? Free agency draft? How are they going to improve this team? They're keeping Dennis Allen, much to his chagrin, but I like Dennis Allen. I'm glad he's staying. That's my opinion, and don't at me. And further on, we're going to talk about the Pels and their recent success and other things as well. Coming up next on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Inspired by the culture and spirit of New Orleans, the contemporary abstract and figurative work of Tony Mose and the urban expressionist art and jewelry of Tracy Mose are now on display and available at Esom Art Galleries. Esom Art Galleries are artist-owned and are located in Uptown New Orleans on Magazine Street and on Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter. Esom Art Galleries, inspiration from the soul of New Orleans.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and by now you should know my favorite block in the city. That's right, this is our sponsor block, 3900 Magazine Street, Sotra, the adornment for inspired living. Man, they got things 50% off their wedding sale, and they're focusing hard on bedding right now. They have fine decorative items for the home, including wonderful bedding and in-stock sheeting. Get over there, get 50%. Also, Elysian, right next door, inside the store, and that's designs from Turkish blends and stuff like that. The clothing, the shoes, and other fabulous personal accessories. And then also, don't forget Jillian Mack, the great art dealer right there, the fine art, beautiful stuff at Jillian Mack. Get out there. They've got a bunch of new stuff in. I love it. Right there on the corner of, obviously, Magazine and Austerlitz, right between Louisiana and Napoleon. And also my good friends at Esam Art right down the street. That's all the 3900 block of Magazine, which also includes Task, by the way, who does a lot of great things for the show. You know who else does a lot of great things for the show? His name is Logan Graffia. And you know what? You know him by now. He's come out here 5 times. Each quarter, we bring him out and we talk some local stuff. Because the segment with Mark went so long, we're not going to have as much time as I wanted to have, but we're going to get into it right now. His podcast, Sports Etouffee, is off the hook. It's every Monday. You got to check it out. I know you know where to find podcasts because that's the rage these days. And Logan, you do a spectacular job with it, man.
Thank you so much for having me on again, Scott.
I mean, it's great. I mean, you love Louisiana, you love local sports, you love New Orleans, you love the teams. And you love giving people a hard time, which I can respect.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I wasn't giving people a hard time, I wouldn't be the brutal, honest person that I am.
You wouldn't be Logan Graffia, that's for sure. Well, let's talk about the Saints, because you are brutally honest. I know you're not a big Dennis Allen fan, but he is here to stay. I've known Dennis for a long time, so I'm reticent to, want to pitch coaches. But I agree. He doesn't have that charisma that, we're used to here in New Orleans with Sean Payton, Jim Mora, even Hazlitt had some, of course, Dicko. They've had some person, Hank Stram. He's not that guy. And I think that's rubbing people the wrong way. But moving past that, they're going to be here. What do the Saints need to do to improve on 9-8? Because they did finish strong against a weak schedule. They were 4-1 in their last 5 games. But what do you think they need to do to take the next step back into the playoffs?
Well, for starters, they got to hire the right offensive coordinator. Pete Carmichael didn't even want the job originally, so hiring the right guy. They interviewing very good candidates from the McVay tree and the Shanahan tree, so you can't go wrong with that. And also fixing the offensive line, fixing the defensive line, and maybe drafting a quarterback, maybe not round 1, but just get one in there, a young guy, do something. I mean, you can only improve.
Well, they haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round, as you know.
Since Archie.
Since Archie Manning in the early 70s. Derek Carr looked good towards the end of the season. Do you think he can improve upon that?
Well, I mean, anybody can improve. I think Carr, towards the end of the season, definitely improved from what we've seen in the beginning. I mean, he struggled mightily before that little stretch at the end. Impressive. I'd like to see that for a full 17-game stretch. So maybe the offensive coordinator that gets hired can do that, help him do that for a 17-game stretch.
I know this is early, but is there a free agent to be or a draft pick that you, Logan, will be dying to have on in the black and gold next season?
Well, outside of Jaden Daniels, which is not realistic, there's Jarrett Verse, defensive end from Florida State, or Cooper Beebe, who I think is the best offensive guard in the entire draft from Kansas State.
Would those 3 positions, defensive end, offensive line, and quarterback, be your main concerns?
Absolutely, and I mean, you can even throw tight end in there if you wanted to, because I mean, I don't think we have the strongest tight end room in the NFL.
Not the strongest, but it's a diverse one.
It's a diverse one.
They do a lot of good things between, Taysom, not really a tight end, but he does so many things. And, of course, Foster Moreau is a big leader. He gets a presence on the offensive line. Of course, you have Juwan Johnson. When he's great, making great catches, he misses the easy one sometimes, but he gets spectacular catches, as that one he got flipping over in one of the last games in the season. But you're right. That's a position also. But I'm going to say this. I got to give you credit. You mentioned Jaden Daniels. This guy right here, from way before everybody else was talking about him winning the Heisman, he put him out there as a guy all over social media saying, why is this guy not going to get the Heisman? And because of you, I started telling the guys on Fox, I said, we need to give Jaden Daniels love when he was getting no love at midseason, and then the grand swell happened. So I'm going to give you partial credit for that, sir.
I appreciate that, because, I mean, I felt like I was one of the only believers after last season at that. And because after last season, there was many people saying, oh, we want the nuts bus. We want the nuts bus. Jaden doesn't do this. Jaden doesn't do that. And I'm just very happy that he was able to come into his own, into the player that I knew that he could be. I mean, another kind of Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts type of player. He's not as big as Jalen Hurts, but, I mean, his deep ball accuracy, everything was just there. I mean, I'm just very happy that he proved me right and proved a lot of doubters wrong.
You're also doing a lot with the Pels. I've watched you grow in this profession. I remember you were in college looking for a job. I was trying to help you. And then but now you're at all the events. Now you're at you're going to practices, you're going to training camp, you're doing all that kind of stuff. The Pels, you've been around now for a couple of years at least. Tell me the progression you've seen from this team to now. And where do you think they can go in the future if they stay healthy?
As I've said on this show many times, healthy, I think this team can be a Western Conference Finals team. Maybe not finals, but Western Conference Finals, and play a team like the Nuggets or even the Timberwolves. But some of these games, like recently against the Suns, struggling mightily on defense. They got to get better on the defensive end and get out of these slumps. Sometimes they're in shooting slumps for long periods. They just got to get out of that. But I do believe in what the job that Willie Green's done, and also James Borrega, got to give him credit as kind of the offensive coordinator in a manner of speaking. And I think this team, they have the pieces to do it. I really do. I mean,
they're playing good. They're playing
been
better,
healthy so far.
They're playing better. They're not going to win them all, y'all, but they've lost. When you look at the 7 games that they've lost by like 4 or 5 or less, and several, I mean, just win 4 of those, right? And now you're talking 29-13 instead of 25-17. Now you're talking a team that's first or second. I mean, I know the first place team, I believe, is 31-13. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are not as great now as they were in the beginning of the season. So, but they still are right there. They're 5th tied with the Suns, so I give them a chance. I have to go soon. Before I do, we give gifts, and because we had to cut your time short, I'm giving you my all-time favorite color gunmetal.
Yes.
I know you don't have one of these yet.
No.
These are precious. Will, the producer, has one.
Wow.
Gunmetal is great. You love it. I'm actually wasn't going to do this because you work on the show, but I'm going to throw in a little bite tea. Go get you some good lunch at Shays Della Shays.
Thank you.
And check that out. We're very thankful for you, as we are for Mr. Johns and Shays Della Shays and all the rest of our sponsors. Go out and please support them as much as you can. And I also want to give kudos to the guy that's your boss as well, Jim Dotson, Ryan Yeager, and of course the producer William Hill, and does a fabulous job. I'm not forgetting you, Daniela, or you, Alex. We got to go, though. Primetime Sports next week. See you then.